Good afternoon. I'm Sari Feldman, the moderator for the next session, OverDrive by the Numbers. Thank you for having lunch with me and my special guest at the 2022 U.S. Book Show as we talk about the data on digital books and reading in libraries and schools. Impactful data is important to stakeholders in today's competitive market. Authors, agents, publishers, booksellers, libraries, schools, and readers are all interested in how data can inform trends, opportunities, or challenges. Joining me for the next 30 minutes is Steve Potash, President and Chief Executive Officer of OverDrive, a company that he founded in 1986. Steve also serves on its board of directors. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Sari.
As CEO, Steve heads an executive strategic team focused on OverDrive's vision to create a world enlightened by reading. Under his leadership, OverDrive has become the leading digital reading platform for ebooks, audiobooks, and other digital media for libraries, schools, government agencies, corporate learning centers, and colleges and universities worldwide. I have known Steve since the launch of OverDrive in public libraries more than 20 years ago and admire the innovation and commitment of the company that enables libraries to deliver digital content. I am thankful for Steve's support of libraries and the ALA. Steve, thank you for joining me today. I know that the pandemic has been a health, social, and educational crisis on an unimaginable scale. With libraries and schools closed, the delivery of remote learning and information has permanently impacted the digital library collection. I also know you have a great story to tell us today and a forecast for libraries, publishers, authors, and of course, readers. So let's get started.
Thank you again, Sari, and thank you to all of our friends at Publishers Weekly and putting together this important opportunity at the U.S. Book Show to talk about how librarians, educators have been on the front line of many of the initiatives that are growing the industry. I think you're going to hear from others, booksellers, publishers, and authors that they've had some strong years in their business, but libraries are sometimes overlooked. And I'm going to just share with you a little bit of the background and what's happened by the numbers. But as a brief introduction, OverDrive is headquartered in Northeast Ohio. And here where we have over 600 technologists, we're also staffed with 100 librarians, educators, and literacy experts. And we are today, through the networks and the channels that I'm going to share with you and the data, serving over 76,000 institutions worldwide. We'll tell you how those are broken down between libraries, academic, university, corporate knowledge centers, and schools. And all of the data and engagement is driven through a web service and catalog called OverDrive Marketplace. This is the B2B supply channel that all of our institutional partners go in to review, curate, and build collections. It's also the marketplace that provides authors, suppliers, and publishers access to these buyers worldwide. And finally, we are a mission-based company, a certified B Corporation dedicated to a world enlightened by reading. So if we are going to look at the numbers, I've broken it into 5 major categories. First, let's understand how authors, publishers can reach institutional buyers through our channels. We're then going to get a breakdown of the numbers that make up the marketplace inventories by format and by other categories. We're then going to review the dominant access and sales models that enable schools, universities, government agencies, and public libraries to supply books and access to reading to their community of readers and patrons. We're then going to look at the big trends in digital circulation. And finally, we're going to also evaluate where demand is coming from and the sources of these activity. So while we may be best known as a leading supplier to public libraries for popular ebooks, audiobooks, and other materials, here's a little breakout of how those institutions actually shape up. We are in most of the major metropolitan centers in the US, North America, and worldwide. In addition, our public library footprint includes many national libraries, where the National Library is actually the customer supplying all the citizens and communities through their public library branches. We also have worked with hundreds of consortia shared collections. Some are statewide, some are regional. And the consortium shared collections actually represent thousands of individual or maybe smaller communities. And finally, in the public library sector, we also work with a variety of agencies that are focused on providing those that need access to print materials in an accessible format, such as print disabled, audio, and the like. So that is the biggest bulk of our business, is selling into the 22,000 public library buyers. But the other big channels include the almost 55,000 schools, which we call here in the US the K-12 buying market. Overseas, it's called primary and secondary education. And we also are servicing over 1,500 academic, professional, government, or military libraries. And they're broken into the university and academic libraries, corporate knowledge centers, government agencies, and the like, with a few specialty markets.
Steve,
Yes.
Was that a big jump in the school market during COVID?
Absolutely. And as we will look at some of the transactional data, when schools shut their doors here in the US in the second week of March of 2020, and every student became a distant learner or a virtual classroom, yeah, it was go time. And we're going to cover some of those trends and transactions. So the acceleration for our authors and publishers, they've seen hyper growth in the school market and some of the international communities, which we'll discuss. But let's take a look at what is in the catalog. And as I mentioned, OverDrive Marketplace is the hub for how these 40,000 publishers and suppliers upload their catalogs, their digital files, their metadata. We enhance it with reviews, and this is a global marketplace for the institutional buyers. This is where the buyers, educators, national governments come in and evaluate materials for their digital library collections or their schools. And we've been operating this since 2000, enabling the suppliers and the publishers real-time access to manage their inventories, upload should they get awards or new reviews. And we complement this with a variety of tools and services that allow all sides of the marketplace to have real-time access to the data to manage the business. So as we look at the digital catalogs, I want to first by saying that OverDrive Marketplace is only focused on in copyright premium materials. Now, while we do have a variety of suppliers of small press and self-publishing aggregators, we really are focused on the in-copyright premium materials that institutions are looking for and prioritize in building their collections to their communities. Of the almost 4.8 million in-copyright materials, 2.7 million are in the category of ebooks. And ebooks is always expanding. Not only is it novels and adult and popular fiction, but it is fixed layout materials, graphic novels, storybooks, and the like, read-alongs, comics, and these materials might be in 100 languages. So the actual count for a particular title is higher because, for example, Harry Potter, we sell in 40 languages in multiple formats. The audiobook collection, again, these are the unique audiobooks in our collection. And here, too, the actual count is higher because of multiple editions, such as abridged, unabridged, or foreign language. And this is coming to us from a global supply chain of almost 40,000 account holders at Marketplace who are constantly feeding us their new releases. I will mention on a typical month, we will upload about 75,000 new titles. And that's just talking about publisher front list material. Recently, we've expanded in the magazine periodical business, which I'll talk about. And now, based on the request of educational and public library institutions, we're also selectively bringing to this community a variety of highly curated streaming video and other databases and materials.
And Steve, through the marketplace, the publishers can tell who's buying what. Like they really can have a snapshot of the public library and school library market.
You know, Sari, for the digital sales to schools and libraries, we have many of our friends in New York and London that are hitting the refresh key multiple times a day because they can see that the National Library just placed an order. Oh, the U.S. Navy is ordering books for their war college. These things are real-time available, and I'll show you a snapshot of what they see. And this is a high-level view of how the catalog breaks out by genre. So as you would imagine in the book business, the two big categories are adult fiction and adult nonfiction. And this is reference, academic, self-help, business in every category and every genre. And over the last few years, a tremendous acceleration in the juvenile and specific YA and early reading materials. And in addition, as I mentioned, to the English language, I've also listed the top 5 non-English languages that we supply hundreds of thousands of titles, and those are in Spanish, German, Chinese, French, and Japanese. And as I mentioned, it's about 100 languages that we have materials in, but these are the big 5. What's very unique for the institutional market is how OverDrive Marketplace today supports almost a dozen different access models, because ultimately it's the rights holder, it's the author and their publisher that get to set the price, the channel, and the access models that are available for institutions to acquire permissions for library lending. Now I'm showing you the most prevalent models, and it starts with what we call one copy, one user. And historically, like an institution would buy 10 copies of a title and 10 patrons could borrow it at the same time. This still is the most popular and persistent available model for digital books, ebooks, and audiobooks in the catalog. And I'll show you a breakout by model. Something we're very excited about is our newest and very favorable model, both for authors, publishers, and our institutions, and we're calling it OverDrive Max. I explained it like going to Costco or the wholesale club, saying I have books with a lot of demand. I'd like to stock up on 100 copies that I could lend out either at the same time for an author event or summer reading program, or as needed. And this is pre-purchasing in bulk, usually at a discounted price, up to 100 loans for a particular digital book, audiobook. The next most prevalent model is what we call simultaneous use, and it's a subscription plan. If you believe a title or a series of, let's say, travel books or study guides are going to be popular and you need them all year long without wait list or holds, you can either select a single title or a range of titles, which is a simultaneous use plan. And for a fixed agreed price by the publisher and by the institution, all readers can have access to these books without holds or wait list. The other two models, especially the next one, cost per circ or loan, that if you're in the video business, you would call it as pay-per-view. So this is where we have many of the major publishers saying, in addition to the copies that are in your standing collections, if you believe there's a demand, the book is now going to be made into a major motion picture, author is coming to town, you can supplement your collections, and at a fixed price set by the publisher and agreed upon by the buyer, you can say, I want to acquire an additional ability to serve a spike or a surge in demand. And only for the school market, we also have some support for special curriculum and classroom set pricing. Here's how the growth of these models in our catalog have been accelerating, especially in the last 2-3 years. So the big blue bar is what we call one copy, one user. And this is a model that we require almost every publisher to participate in one form or another. Some have some metered limits on time or how many checkouts, but the growing stack are the simultaneous use collections, the OverDrive Max bundled discounted with no time limit on 100 loans over near term or multiple years, and the cost per checkout. And you can see we're now well over 1 million units of popular material. On the right, you can see some of the major publishing partners. This is just a small sampling of those that are participating in what I call the on-demand models. What's nice about these for school planning or in advance of a summer reading program, these models do not require you to know exactly how many users need a book at the time. They can kind of flex based on interest or surge. And these models are also excellent for special reading programs such as digital book clubs, summer reading, or some of the other campaigns. Sarah, you asked about, do authors and publishers, specifically publishers, have access to see what's happening? And this is just a sample of a demo account. Every publisher and aggregator and supplier at OverDrive Marketplace has a dashboard where they can see real-time sales by channel and actually even by institution. Well, let's talk about what's really been happening out there. And I know that many of our library partners and the industry have followed. Usually at the beginning of each year, we give the new record circulation for how libraries have been stepping up and meeting the demand for digital books, e-audio, and materials. Here's a review of the last several years. Now, the blue line are the actual results. At the end of 2020 and the end of 21, we hit unprecedented levels of digital book circulation. But the orange levels would have been the organic growth if it wasn't for the pandemic. So you can see if we would have been experiencing the same year-over-year double-digit growth, we would have been at that orange or gray line. But as libraries, especially in North America, shut their doors during a second, third week of March of 2020, it created that initial surge in buying and demand when seniors couldn't go to their local branch to pick up books or audiobook CDs. And of course, the urgency to support students that were all distance learners. Next slide. Let's look how this broke out from the two primary formats. While historically, over the last few years, audiobooks was growing in public library circulation at a higher year-over-year rate than ebooks, the script flipped during the pandemic. Well, we quickly learned that if you're not getting in your car and commuting to your job, and offices were shutting down, and parents weren't waiting to drop off or pick up kids, we saw audiobook growth flatten a bit and a significant spike in ebooks, and that's reflected in these two charts. Actually, audiobook use during 20 and 21 was a little off pace, while ebooks surged at a dramatic rate.
How's it looking for 22? What are you seeing for 22?
In 22, I'm going to give you a forecast here, but what we are learning is that while libraries were delighted are opening their branches and there's now in-branch programming and schools are back in session, we are at elevated levels. But the growth year over year it's starting to return to the pre-COVID year over year growth. And also, we are still seeing an elevated audience of readers and seniors and students that are benefiting from the digital experience that COVID introduced them to. Many are sticking around and sticking with it. But also, as we go into the access models and what's driving this growth, libraries are also benefiting from more of these on-demand simultaneous access or on-demand models. So if we look at the next slide, we report on an annual basis not only how many checkouts or books were loaned, but we're also measuring the wait list. For a lot of the most popular New York Times bestsellers or in-demand titles, because not all of those have an on-demand model, we saw a spike in 2020 on the wait list, but that wait list then leveled out for 21. And this was a result of some of the new access models like cost per checkout that could reduce the wait list. In some cases, for children's book, the cost per checkout could be as low as 49.50. For many of the popular bestsellers from HarperCollins, they were under $2, $1.49, $1.99. You could reduce that wait list. And so we saw during 2021, the wait list start to flatten out as far as the year-over-year growth. Next slide shows you how that also translated into the wait list by formats. So you can see we had kind of straight line organic transactions for audiobook holds, and ebooks, which was a much higher number, had the spike and then flattened out as far as the wait list times and the number of patrons waiting for a particular title. Let's look at the next slide, because when we see these record checkouts and circulations, part of that is driven by many of the new formats that have entered the space. So this is just the last 12 months of magazine and periodical circulation of public libraries. And for 21, it was well over 20 million checkouts of popular magazines and periodicals. What's nice about these models are every edition is simultaneous access, and a reader can get access to every issue. And most libraries are allowing their readers and also students to get, let's say, junior editions or of many of these publications. And it doesn't count against a patron's limit for borrowing books for ebooks or audiobooks from their library. So magazines was one of the big drivers in, again, filling gaps, and it's also reaching new audiences in these communities. Another area of significant year-over-year growth has been in graphic novels and comic books. Here, too, many of the most popular materials, whether it's DC Comics or the Marvel series, are available under unlimited subscription plans. And this enables many readers the first time to discover the fun and joy of getting graphic novels, popular books, Wimpy Kids, Dogman, and of course the comics, with the convenience of using their Sora reading app in the classroom or their popular app or Libby from the public library. But these areas of periodical graphic novels and comics, again, contributed to meeting a lot of reader demand and bringing new readers into the public library. And this is something that I know a lot of our library partners and directors are going to be very interested in as they go to their boards and they look at their budgets. Something that for the last 20 years has been an ongoing journey of evangelizing to our publishers, authors, and suppliers that they are best served if their titles can be broadly discovered, and we're going to look at some of those points of discovery soon, and if they also participate in multiple sales models to schools and libraries. But for the library community, it also means that as we keep adding additional sales models, and many of these are complementary, where several of the big five are participating in 3 or 4 of these models at the same time, so that the buyer can look almost as a portfolio manager. I'll buy a few titles to see what the demand is. If it becomes popular, I have other tools now to meet that demand or to manage the wait list and within my budget. And as a result, if you look at the last 7 years and we took a snapshot of first year of the pandemic and the full year, and here's an estimate, Sari, for what we expect. I know it's an exact number. I don't know how my team got to that exact number, but we expect by the end of this calendar year to have our partners circulate in excess of 530 million titles And when we look at an all-in cost, we expect that the cost will be under 90 cents to serve that community. So our goal is to serve the maximum number of readers at leveraging the best benefit for the institution or the schools or the government agency's budget in this. And this is a combination of factors. It's the simultaneous use plans and also the reuse of some of the inventories they built up over prior years.
And also the use of periodicals and graphic novels and comic books.
Yeah, those other materials and low-cost juvenile materials are bringing the overall cost down. And this way, of course, we still have work to do with some of the highest priced materials, evangelizing and giving our buyers options to supplement some of the highest demand for new releases. So where's all this activity happening? And this is something when we share this with our publishing partners and sometimes others in the industry want to say, where is all this demand coming from? It really is a combination of billions of reader sessions a month. And just the activity that our public libraries have, not at the OverDrive service, just at their catalogs or through their own discovery layers. But the quick rundown is we are seeing and measuring demand through the Libby app, our legacy app, the OverDrive app, which is being set to pasture. In the school market, the free reading app and free books that are in these 50,000 schools through Sora. All of our institutions may have a digital library front door like this one for Los Angeles Public Library. As you know, the online public access catalogs of every institution or search that is also connected through APIs or through search services, Google, Bing, Yahoo, and the others. This creates a dramatic amount of readers who are searching and looking for what to read next. Here's a little breakdown of just where this activity is happening if we look at the US over the last 12 months. And I think it's notable that on the right column, we're talking about states based on their population ranking. Yet if we rank by the ones that are being the most active in using their libraries and their school collections, you can see that several are actually more active in markets such as Ohio, such as the state of Washington, or in Massachusetts, where their activity of their library systems, their consortium, their discovery platforms are actually driving more activity than their population might otherwise suggest. And as to what they're looking at, here's a little high-level view of what folks are searching for in the category and the genres. So fiction, thriller, mystery, historical fiction, as you would imagine, just like in the print catalogs, just in retail bookselling. And on the right, we just wanted to share, stripping away the books that people are searching for, taking out Harry Potter or James Patterson. Here on the mobile apps or on the desktop, what folks are really searching for more frequently. So if I was going to coach an author to craft a book that they want to get discovered, it might be a cozy mystery involving Minecraft as a graphic novel. Something like that would show up in hundreds of millions of searches if you wanted to create a title that people are looking for, just as an example. If we just look at one of the areas of transactions, and our API server calls are a fraction of the overall traffic. This doesn't include through Libby or through direct access. Through the integrations, and we have 500 third parties that have integrated into the discovery platform, their own mobile apps and the like. Here are the top 10, just by sheer volume. And just so you can appreciate the reach and the power of the communities that libraries and schools serve, every second we're processing through this channel 1,200 requests, this channel alone, and this is the activity of people looking to see what's been added, what's new, and following series and things that book lovers or those that are new to the digital library are discovering. We operate each month about 2 to 3 dozen local digital book club, author events, Mayor's Read, Mayor's Book Club, things like that. But here's 3 of the larger ones. and the kind of year-over-year growth. And the impact this has for an author or a series or a brand has been pretty remarkable. Globally, Big Library Read has been operating for, I think, 7 or 8 years, and we do it 3 times a year. And I'm going to show you the impact it's had for retail sales. Together We Read is opt-in the US. Sora Sweet Reads is where schools year-long are promoting. I just got a notice that we're launching the TD Bank in Canada, and almost the entire nation of Canadians will be participating in a national reading program. For authors, agents, and libraries, almost all of these are supported by simultaneous access titles, many of them donated by authors and publishers. And here's one example. We were working with Sourcebooks, and a title that came out last November, it came out October of 2020, was the subject of our most recent Big Library Read this past November. And as soon as libraries start to promote, join our digital book club, you can see the orange line is the daily sales ranking for this author's work, pre-program, as the program got announced, and then during the 2-week digital book club campaign. And it has stayed at these elevated levels. And we've had dozens of publishers and authors say, not only did the community reading program lift my sales in print at Amazon, at all forms of retail, but all of a sudden it's lifted my mid-list and my backlist sales as well. Once you find an author, you want to see what more you can benefit from. But if we are going to look at reader engagement and discovery, OverDrive is also working nationally to try and test as a service to our authors, our publishing partners, and our institutions. How can we promote the love of reading and the discovery of the value proposition and of that public library card in your wallet? And if you haven't enjoyed the benefit of an ebook, audiobook magazine from your library or streaming video. So this is some of the campaigns that we have run over the last year. And here's just some snapshots. In national campaigns promoting either specific genres like holiday romance titles or seasonal materials, we are getting experience in bringing a very low cost of acquiring an interested reader to discover the joys of a digital book from their public library. Here's some of the national campaigns. Now, next slide shows some examples of where we partnered with regional library leaders in Texas, New York, Michigan, and California. And here in a much more targeted, and both of these are paid campaigns. Both of these were funded by OverDrive in partnership with our local library. And you can see these are ways that authors are getting the benefit of the library educating their community about books and reading available. They're all taxpayers for the most part. Government funds are supplying this. We're trying to help public libraries and communities promote access to books and reading more than ever. And I will tell you, we've done significant testing with various genres of books, book covers. And what's something I'll tell all of our partners is when you associate your campaign with your local public library, it outperforms than not using the library logo or the library brand. That's a big lesson from here. And that kind of wraps up the deep dive of some of the big numbers, Sari, I wanted to share with our US Book Show friends today. And hopefully it's given a little bit of what's happened over not only the last 2 years, but some of the characteristics that has driven this growth for publishers, growth for authors in unit sales and revenue. And hopefully we have some happy readers out there.
Well, it's a great story about reading. And one of the stories of the pandemic is that people are reading more again. And I was wondering if you might just give us a very quick, what's the trend for 2022 and beyond?
Well, Sari, thank you. And I would say when we were called to be a partner in pandemic response and relief, the priority became identifying where there were gaps in service. And so this is why on our first slide, we talked about access and advocacy. So fortunately, some of the government funding and ARPA and broad-based fundings are providing the ability for some of the underserved communities, rural and urban, to have access to the online resources. Along with that, we saw that there was gaps in whether it's seniors with the ability to navigate the digital world, install an app, get their first digital book, whether it's in their earbuds or on their connected speaker. And one of the trends that I will say, as you mentioned earlier, is the significant ramp up in the school library. We're about to hit a milestone for Sora. We'll be circulating its 100 millionth digital book in the Sora app. And almost all of that came from in-classroom use or assigned reading, now supplemented by self-selected reading. We're connecting those schools with all of their public libraries. So the trends will be onboarding young readers and letting them select a book as a choice, whether it's fiction or graphic novels or to supplement their academic work. So I think you're going to see the average age of and audio use continue to drop as we're bringing on millions of younger users.
Well, you have a fantastic story to tell, and I hope you'll keep telling it. At the same time, some of our listeners may want the slides, and can they contact OverDrive to get the slides and use them with their boards or community groups?
Absolutely, and I'm sure our friends at US Book Show will also provide that information.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much, Steve. It was great to be with you. And now I'll turn the day back over to Andrew.